First time serving as a bull for a cuck couple. CREMP, no regrets. This happened a few years ago, when I was living in upstate New York. At the time I was a 30-something man who was playing at being a bull for hot wife couples. All my encounters to this point had been with hot wives playing alone and couples that were basically just looking for vanilla THR sums. None of them involved the humiliation aspect that is expected in the cuckold community. All that changed when I met Steph on Craigslist Casual Encounters. This was back when that was still a thing. She had placed a fairly brief post with no pictures stating her age, same as mine, and general location, and that she and her cuck were looking for a bull to please her. I wasn't sure how I would feel about humiliating the guy, but it had been a while since I'd played, so I figured I would give it a go and respond, not really expecting to hear back anyway. I figured it was at least 50-50 that it was either a scam or a couple testing the waters that would never go through with it, but she replied almost immediately. She sent me pictures of her perfect body, huge TTS, a firm round SS, long brown hair, and mesmerizing hazel eyes. I couldn't believe how hot she was. Two things quickly became clear from our communication. 1, that they were really into the humiliation aspect of cuckolding, and 2, that Steph was absolutely wild. She was very into texting, and quickly sent nudes that felt too good to be true, nipples hard with arousal and shaved bare a-hole glistening with wetness. I thought I must be getting catfished, but she was willing to talk on the phone before we met, and after we chatted a bit I was getting good vibes and felt comfortable enough to meet up. She provided me with a date and time to arrive at their place. When I showed up to the address she had sent, I sent her a text, and she replied and told me to go around back. The rear yard was surrounded by tall trees and a privacy fence, totally blocking any views from the neighbors. There before me stood the woman from the pictures, smoking hot, with a cigarette dangling between her cherry lips. She was wearing a tight dress that molded itself to her curves. Without speaking, without hesitation, she put the cigarette out, lowered herself to her knees, unzipped my pants, and freed my swollen pee-pee. Her eager mouth quickly engulfed it and her tongue swirled around it, making me groan with pleasure. I reached down and pulled her TTS from the tight dress and fondled them while she serviced every inch of my rock-hard manhood, telling her what a good little SLT she was. The reality of the situation washed over me. Here I was, getting a BLWJB from a woman I had just met, who hadn't yet said a word to me. This and her SKLL was just too much. I told her I was close and she just doubled down, pulling away only at the last second to direct the eruption of CM all over her chest. She stood up and winked at me and beckoned me to follow her inside. Jim, her husband, was sitting at a desk in their dining room, which was open to the kitchen, where we had entered, doing his bills. She proudly displayed the glistening CM on her breasts and commanded him to lick it off. She walked over, grabbed his head and pushed it into her chest, smearing CM on his face before letting him lick the rest off her breasts and nipples. Clean, she pushed him away and returned to the kitchen area. She bent over the kitchen island and with a twitch of her hips, she arched her back towards me, pushing her SS outwards and up. Her dress rode up with this motion, exposing what was underneath, absolutely nothing, offering me a clear view of her naked bottom from behind. Her glistening a-hole was wet and ready for me. I came up behind her, my pee-pee still hanging out of my pants from after the BLWJB. I started kissing the back of her neck and playing with her TTS again, rubbing my pee-pee against her SS. I got hard again fast. And I needed to be inside her. I grabbed her SS cheeks one in each hand and spread her apart, then slid the tip of my pee-pee between her wet a-hole lips, teasing her CLT, fully in control of when I was going to F her. She moaned to Jim how good it was going to feel to finally be F'd by a real man as I slid into her, just the tip, but then I pulled out to another moan, disappointed now, as I pulled away until we were only connected by a lewd bridge of her wetness and my prec M. I teased her like this twice more, until she was begging to be F'd. The next time I slid the tip in like I was going to tease, instead I slammed into her from behind. She moaned in pleasure as I thrust my pee-pee into her wet wimp, each deep stroke pushing her against the countertop. Steph was spewing out all sorts of depraved poop to Jim, letting him know just how good it felt to have me inside her, telling him she'd stop taking the pill so she could bear a real man's baby. Fantasy talk, I was pretty sure, but at that point I also wasn't thinking straight enough to care. She made him come over and pour me a whiskey, which I drank while I continued slowly stroking her a-hole, each deep thrust soliciting another moan from her. Between the moans she told Jim to go back to the desk and buy plane tickets for her next solo Caribbean getaway. When he balked she told him he would never satisfy her with his pee-pee the way I was, and this was the only way he could actually show her that he loved her. Her words unleashed something primal in me, and I started slamming into her harder and harder, feeling my next orgasm building up in my balls. I needed to fill her with CM and even if she was fertile right then and there I didn't care, I wanted to breed her. I spanked her SS and told her I was going to use her as my CM dump, and she pressed back against me and reached down and rubbed her CLT while moaning, "Do it, give me a baby, CM in me, CM in me, CM, CM. F, fuck. And as she came I let loose too. I released my load deep inside her, each pulse of my pee-pee shooting a rope of CM into her unprotected a-hole. When I finally pulled out, my CM started drooling down her left thigh. She turned around and pulled herself into a seated position on the counter. Sitting with her legs wide open, she demanded that he lick every drop of my CM off her wet thighs and out from her dripping slit. After he cleaned her up we went upstairs to their bedroom. We all got NCAD, and I realized he was wearing a pee-pee cage. He licked her wimp again while I fed her my pee-pee and got hard once more, then she commanded him to lay down on his back with his head towards the bottom of the bed. She straddled him in a 69 position and told me to show him up close how well I stretched her a-hole. As I looked down to slide myself into her wetness once again I could see that mix of humiliation, love, fear and arousal in his eyes that every cuck experiences. I grabbed her hair and pulled as I pushed deep into her, effing her like an animal on top of him, my balls slapping against his face, adding to the humiliation. Finally, I came one last time, grunting as I thrust into her. As I pulled out, the wet tip of my PP trailed a mix of her juice and my CM across his forehead. She immediately smothered his face with her CM-filled wimp and ordered him to lick every drop out of her slit. Her legs wrapped around his head, she came again, hard, and then pulled him up to kiss her. I could feel the mood shifting, that they were done with me for the day, so I thanked them and said I'd let myself out. As I gathered my clothes, she pulled the key to his PP cage out of the drawer and let him loose, ready to reclaim her, and I left, wondering with mixed emotions if I would ever see or hear from them again.